Hello everyone and welcome back to the Football Psych YouTube channel, where today we're going to be talking about how difficult is it moving to England, living here and playing in the Premier League. So what factors determine whether a player moves to England, settles in really easily, can concentrate on the pitch without any distraction, or whether players struggle to adjust to the new culture and climate, and for younger players specifically, moving away from loved ones? Well, let's talk about it. Player care isn't a new phenomenon in football, but it's definitely an ever-growing one. These are departments set up in football clubs to ultimately allow players to focus on the football and nothing else. They handle everything else. They make all types of arrangements. They sort out admin for them, they set up direct debits, pay bills, organise vehicles and property prior to their move to the country. These departments are designed to allow players to focus on the football and nothing else. They don't need to be worrying about their car bill or the MOT or their rent or anything like that. All they've got to worry about is their food, and they can concentrate on the pitch and ultimately do the job that they were brought in for. They go above and beyond the line of duty to ensure they can provide any service, day or night, to any player that needs it, of course within reason. Player care staff are basically sports psychologists, to be honest, but unofficial. They control the lifestyle aspects of football instead of maybe performance. However, there is a direct correlation. If a player is happy and settled and is enjoying living in the country and not having to worry about money issues, then they're going to perform better on the pitch, right? Well, that makes sense anyway. I guess the aim is to minimise stress as much as possible, leading to happier athletes, more focused athletes, and hopefully better results for the team as a whole. So how different can the UK really be to other parts of Europe or beyond in terms of living here? I think the simple answer is very different. I've been having conversations recently with foreign players that have come to play in the UK and are now living here, and they talk of some of the lifestyle changes really that caught them off guard, or they're aware of but took them by surprise when they got here. So driving on the left-hand side of the road was very disorientating. You've got a 17, 18-year-old just passed a test wherever they are in the world, moved to England to come and play football here, so live here on their own, new car, new side of the road. That can be very disorientating, I can imagine, very strange. But to delve in a little deeper, specifically what player care staff do, I heard a story that someone told me where prior to their move, the player care individual at the club they were going to play for in England had arranged 7 properties for them to view in an area of their choice. 7 properties just to view. That's a crazy amount. That just shows you the level that they go to ensure that every need is satisfied or at least covered, and that there's always a backup. They organised his car, everything was done. So when he got here, he was handed over his keys to both his place to live and his car, and he was ready to go. He could rock up and train on a Monday morning and not have to worry about finding a car or renting a little place for now. And it just shows you the extent to which player care goes, and I think it's only getting more and more detailed. So how does this link to mental health? Well, I guess there's a massive relationship between the two. Living on your own can be a lonely place at the best of times, but let alone if you're a young person kind of just starting to shape your future or kind of come to terms with who you are as an individual, and then you're kind of whisked away to another country to live there and do a job, to be fair, but I'm sure that can be very difficult for young individuals. So a week in the life of a footballer consists of 5 or 6 days of training, depending on if there's 1 or 2 match days. There'll be 1 or 2 match days on top of that. So they normally get to the training ground around 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, and then breakfast just shortly after that. Training between 11 and 12, let's say. But then they're normally gone by 2 or 3 o'clock. So there's a lot of free time, more free time on their hands than your average person. And all them instincts and natural behaviours at that age, where you kind of go and explore and socialise and find things out the hard way really by navigating your path, is really restricted as an athlete, and more specifically as a footballer. Going out drinking and getting your 3 a.m. kebab is frowned upon, to say the least. It's going to affect your nutrition and your performance. And it used to be done in the 90s and early 2000s. You'd see players pictured out, but it doesn't happen too much anymore. You know, I think the game's become more professional each year. So it's really tricky as a young person, where you have the opportunity to go and do that, but you are inhibiting your career by doing that. Therefore, you're not living the life of a normal 17, 18-year-old, but a very sheltered one, but a very lonely one as well. And then you've got injured players on top of that. If they do a cruciate ligament to their knee, that's at least 6 months out of the game. And they still come into the training ground on a daily basis after surgery, and it's rehabilitation, and they can still take part in analysis and stuff like that, but no training. So they've got to watch everyone else put their boots on and go on the pitch. And they've got to sit there on the medical bed in the treatment room, and it becomes a social hub, I guess, but it can also be a really dark place, you know. You're being paid to be a footballer, and yet you can't play football. So maybe you feel a bit lost and caught between a rock and a hard place and free fall almost, and it's maybe tricky to know your place, and them temptations are probably there even more so. And you know, you see a lot of players put on weight, and it can probably be really depressing at some stages. So what about COVID's impact as well? Well, I'd imagine it magnifies everything tenfold. You know, also speaking to some individuals recently saying their families, if they're not on, their country's not on the quarantine list, their families can't come and visit them. So they're here on their own, coming up to Christmas time, and they're not sure if they're going to see their families or not. And yes, they've got to make sacrifices as footballers, and we all do as everyday people, but they're not even going to sure if they're going to see their family. So let's take London and see the two sides of London, or at least the two sides of London that you could see, or the perspective you could have as a footballer. So it's a new city, unlimited opportunity, millions of new people to meet, things to do. Yet on the other side of the coin, maybe if you're injured, or if you're just locked away, and during these uncertain times, you could probably feel really empty, the city. You feel like you're a bit on edge, and maybe aren't as brave to go and explore and challenge yourself and do new things. And suddenly those millions of people become millions of strangers. So let's move on to the demands of the Premier League itself. Well, it's physical, it's tough, and it's ruthless. I think it's equally physically and mentally challenging. And there's plenty of factors that play a part in that. You've got the hostile crowds, you've got the cold and wet weeknight games, the relentless scheduling, a lot of travelling. It really can become a chaotic season. I think it's fair to say some simply can't hack the ugly nature of the Premier League, of English football. It's not as glamorous and pretty sometimes as maybe the Spanish league is, and it's not always about flair, but putting in crunching tackles, and the fans rise with that, and it's not always about the football itself, but the passion. And you know, you talk about the magic of the FA Cup, and really stadiums can be a place you don't want to be, especially if you're not playing well. I think you really have to adapt your game as a player to come and play in England. Not necessarily loads of different attributes and the way you play football, but you've definitely got to put a shift in. You've got to work hard, you've got to run hard. You know, it's more physically demanding than some of the other leagues, where maybe you can be a bit more of a luxury player and not apply yourself as much. And you've seen a lot of players come over to England and maybe not be able to adapt to that side of the game, and the crowd definitely let them know that. Ultimately, are they willing to accept the attitude of pull your socks up and put a shift in? That's what it comes down to a lot of the time. That's going to be it for this video. I hope you did enjoy it, and who knows, maybe learnt something. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Been crying so much to the poltergeist, trying to hold on to love, but it's frosted.